So hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Barner, and I'm really excited to be bringing you Lighthouse Ventures podcast, where I have my first guest, Ed Modzel. Ed, I want to welcome you to Lighthouse Podcasts, and it's really important for me to start giving back. It's been a wild ride. You have been very instrumental in my success, and I think it's really important for people to understand how they can get started in real estate. And sometimes people get scared and they just start absorbing information, but then they never do anything with it. So it's really important for me to help build wealth or help others build wealth and see that it's just common everyday folk like you and I that are jumping in and deciding to take action and really changing the trajectory of our own families' lives. And so I'm curious, you've been in real estate quite a while now, but you haven't always been in real estate. In fact, you used to be in TV production and you had a great career there. So I'm curious, why did you end up going over into real estate? And just tell us a little bit more about you and why real estate for you.
Yeah, sure. So after I got out of the Navy, I got married, and that was 1979. 1980, I decided to dabble in real estate investments. I read a book by Robert Allen. In fact, he's still around, called No Money Down. And he had like a little event with a bunch of speakers. So, I got into real estate on a part-time basis. I bought a 5-family in 1980. And then, several other properties, maybe about 20 other properties over the years for the next 35 years, as I had a career in television in New York City. That was, on the technical side, behind the camera. And so one day, I guess I was sitting there, and now I'm, 60 years old, and I say, I don't really have enough money to retire on. And I always wanted to do more real estate. So I decided to leave my job. I loved my job, but, I left my job and I got full-time into basically house flipping, which was the craze of the day, from watching it on TV. And I did that for about 1.5 years, and the novelty, quickly wore off. I went from a very glamorous and rewarding job to one that wasn't as fulfilling. I found myself spending most of my time at Home Depot and such, picking up supplies for my contractors. So, I've been going to local RIA meetings during that time, and there was somebody talking about multifamily, and it looked interesting. It took like about 1 year or so for it to, settle in and wrap my head around it. And I did 2 limited partnerships with that company, like a week apart. And right after that, writing the check on the second one on the way home, I said to my wife, I'm going to do this full time. That's what I did. And I had to, fill in the blanks with the educational part. I knew basic real estate, but I didn't know multifamily. So I went through like 3 different programs, and I settled with one. And then I decided to, I was pretty introverted, so I really had to force myself to do a lot of things. Like I just picked Atlanta. It looked like a nice central spot. I'm from New York. New York is not a very good area for multifamily. It takes a long time to process an eviction. Taxes are very high. The prices are very high. And the population is kind of like shrinking. People are moving down south, the Southeast, Midwest, Texas. So I looked at all the areas, and I settled in on Atlanta because Atlanta looked like it was in the central part of kind of where I wanted to be. And I started going down to Atlanta every 4 to 6 weeks. It took me 9 months, but I found my first property down there. That's the long and short of it.
Well, you did something that most investors don't do. And you actually moved, you and your wife, into that very first property down in Atlanta that you bought. And I shared that story with my husband. And I thought, and I've told you this before, how many wives would do that?
Because not many.
It was wasn't it a Class C property?
Yeah, maybe C minus.
Yeah. So for those that are just listening and plugging into real estate and don't understand class types, why don't you share what a Class C and what your wife endured a little bit? Why don't you tell us about a Class C property?
Yeah, well, Class C minus property, I called it a Class C, but now I tell the truth, and it was a Class C minus. Well, one thing I could tell you is that every morning around 6:30, 7 o'clock, we would be woken up by police sirens coming down the road, and I just prayed that it wasn't going to slow down and turn into my property. I mean, we did have our fair share of police activity there. But why did we move down there? Hey, we were like excited kids in our 60s to embark on this new adventure. And we were just so excited. And, I've done, many little endeavors over the years, on the sideline of my W-2 that never really quite panned out for one reason or another. And I was bound and determined I was going to make a success out of this one. So that's why I moved down there. I wanted to ensure the success. We did a JV, so there were 5 partners, but I was pretty much the one, running the operation. And I just wanted to make it a success as much as possible. And we were only supposed to be there for 9 months, but it turned out to be 17 months because we had to basically fire 2 property managers, one after 6 months, one after 5 months. And then we became the property managers for the last 6 months. And we sold the property in 17 months in a day, and everybody made out great. We basically doubled our money in 17 months. And, a lot in part because I was there, running it. And it really set the tone and got me going. And while I was there, I got into, I have to think for a minute, but probably 3 or 4 other properties while I was down there. So I did make Atlanta kind of like my home base for a while. And then I started spreading out after that.
Yeah, so you mentioned a lot of things in there that I know our listeners will want to know more about. And I'm kind of curious on the splits. You had 5 people, but obviously you and Pilar moved into this building. You're now at the last 6 months, you fired your property manager. You're now the property manager. Did that change the way you split the money at the end? Did you end up taking more? Or did you start paying yourself to be the property manager?
Yeah, well, I mean, that part was not very lucrative for us. We did, I think before we became the property manager, we were taking a 1.5% asset management fee, but on a 40-unit property, it's not a lot. And then we did take a 4% property management fee when we were managing it. But even when we weren't the actual manager, we were kind of like still the manager, So, that part wasn't really a moneymaker for us. It was more important that the property was a success and that my investors made money. I made money too, but I also was a very active partner where the others weren't. So, I probably didn't make over that year and a half. Maybe I made just as much as I did when I was a chief engineer in television. So, it wasn't the most lucrative thing, but it was a good start, good foundation.
Mm-hmm. I know when I was starting to try to find my first apartment building, you kept telling me to go bigger, Jennifer, go bigger. I don't want to look at anything smaller than, the line was really 100 units, and you and I settled at 72 doors. But there was a moment where I was bringing you 50 doors or 40 doors, and you said you frequently go back to the Atlanta deal and say that you would never do something small like that. Can you share with our audience why you wouldn't do a small deal like that?
Okay. I like the 100 unit deals and bigger because you could put full-time property management there. You can have somebody on site. Now, would I do a smaller unit again? I thought about this a lot. Yes, I would, but a couple conditions have to exist. And that is, it has to be like a better class property, like a B class. Now, I just find that people living in a B class apartments need a little less adult supervision. People do some crazy things at a C and C minus property that you could not believe. So the other thing is me or one of the partners on a smaller property needs to be close to the property, so they could keep an eye on it as well. Because smaller properties, I feel that the property manager, they're not making a lot of money on that, and so they're not going to give as much attention that you're expecting, because they're not making that much money. So that's my thought process there. Now, people, I think the natural tendency is for people to want to start out small. And that's okay. But you can also start out bigger by partnering with other, seasoned investors, somebody like yourself, somebody like me, somebody getting into the business. You could start out, in a 100+ unit by either finding the deal or doing some other part like asset management, underwriting, capital raising, and you're just going to take less of a percentage in the beginning because you're just learning. And, you're going to really be tagging along with somebody who's more experienced. Now, on that 40 unit that I did that we just talked about, I was leading the way. I was the chief cook and bottle washer on that. And, it really made me learn things because there was nobody else on the team that I could look to for guidance, because I was the one. And so it was tough. The next few deals I got in with somebody more experienced than me. And that was a lot less stressful, but I did, I don't regret doing that 40 unit. I mean, it really, it really gave me, put me on the fast track, I think.
I think it did too. And I think you learned a lot more than you probably even realize. You're probably also a better asset manager. I mean, I know when we get on our weekly calls, when we're managing the 5 properties that we own together, you have very good questions because you've been there, you've run a property, you know exactly what's happening in those C-class buildings. And your thought process and your questions are better because you've experienced all those things firsthand.
Yeah.
So that does make you a better, just overall, a better real estate investor and a team player. I know we all appreciate you being on the team and
Well, thank you.
and the questions that you asked. So thank you for that. So, if you were looking back, we always want to say, hey, if I could go back in time, would you do anything differently, or what would you tell your younger self?
Well, yeah, that's a good one. If I could go back and redo it, I think I would start off with my goals, and be more purposeful with time blocking. Like if you have a goal for the year, you have to make you have to make some progress along the way. So I think I would really emphasize, goal setting. And I think my whole life, I thought that I don't need a coach. I don't need nobody. I'm going to do this myself. Well, now my mindset has changed on that. I would say that if you want to get someplace bigger, faster, get a coach or mentor. Somebody who's traveled that road before, somebody that, whatever you think is hard to do, they think it's easy because they've done it 100 times. That I was of the mentality, and Jake and Gino use this term. It's called the I'm a mentality. I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. What, $50 to put a toilet in? I could do that in 10 minutes. Of course, it's going to take me, an hour because, undoubtedly I got to go to Home Depot for something, And
then the part you bought won't fit, right?
Exactly. So, yes, mentoring, coaching, if you can't afford that, for whatever, you can't afford that, put yourself in a community of like-minded people. You don't want to be around negative thinking people. You want to be around positive thinking people. Now, if you have some negative people in your family, well, not much you could do about that. But, people that you want to hang around with and invest with, that's what I would say there. What else would I do? I probably would look to partner with somebody more experienced than me early on, rather than forging my own path the whole way and making all the little mistakes along the way.
Wow, there's so many good nuggets right there. The mentoring, I agree. I always thought that, if you needed a mentor, that means you had some issues you were trying to work through in life, right? Or a coach of some sort. And I realized I hired a coach also through the Rich Dad program, and then along through the Lifetime Cash Flow program that Rod Cleave put together. I hired a coach there too. So it has really accelerated my career. And so it's done just the opposite of what I had anticipated. I always thought it had a bad stigmatism to it, but I realize now that it's a way to fast track. It's like the fast pass at Disneyland. You get to, just accelerate your career and get to where you never thought you could do, or never thought you could get in a much shorter time span. So I agree with you there. You also mentioned, I know you do coaching, and what would you say, or how could people get a hold of you if they're thinking about doing coaching and they wanted to reach out to you? How would somebody go about reaching you? And
oh yeah, sure. Well, you can reach me on my website, which is Gimme Shelter Equity.com. That's GIMME. Maybe you can see it on the logo there.
Yeah,
and set up a call with me.
that's awesome. So I appreciate all the value you added. One thing we didn't hear is how many doors do you own now?
Well, I think it's around 1,300. When you get to the point where you're buying and selling, we start talking in transactions. But I think it's around 1,300 right now. But as a GP, which is the general partner or an active partner in the business, you could own various different percentages of these deals. So, maybe 1,300 sounds impressive or whatever, but you could own 300 units outright by yourself and, have a lot more cash flow than I do. But, I've set it up pretty nice and, basically setting up a lifestyle for myself. During my working years, I had a 4.5-hour commute every day. I know that's hard to believe, but I live on Long Island, and to get into New York City, door to door, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I did that for, 30 years, I don't know. And now I have about a 30-second commute. And, my daughter's working for me. My wife worked with me for a few years. Now she's babysitting the grandson. So, we set a very good life up for ourselves. And, we set it up where we do traveling, and we could stop down at any time, unless we're maybe in the middle of a closing, then we got to be there. But it's been a good ride.
That's amazing. And that's what we're all trying to get to. We're all trying to get that financial freedom, that time freedom that everybody talks about, but very, very few of us really get to ever experience. So I feel like you've hit the lottery. Would you say that as well?
Yes, I would. And now I got 3 daughters, and they're starting to all get interested in the business. And, it's very exciting.
Well, I'm certainly thrilled that you said yes on that very first apartment building. We've now done 5 deals together, and I'm excited about the future. One last question.
Sure.
What is your goal for the remainder of the year? I know interest rates are going crazy, and everybody thinks it's doom and gloom out there. What does your crystal ball say the future holds?
Yeah, well, things are definitely changing. But when I got started, interest rates got up to like almost 19%, I believe. I remember getting on one of my houses, I got a 14 5/8% adjustable mortgage. So it really, you can make money in all kinds of markets. We have to be a lot more cautious now. The last several years, you could just bebop through and pretty much make money on anything. But now you got to be a little bit more careful. We're being very cautious with bridge debt. Bridge debt is an adjustable mortgage, but with interest rates going up, we have to underwrite the deal, assuming that the interest rates are going to go to 7.5, 8%, which sounds crazy now, but it's a very real possibility. We're just being more cautious and selective and
Yeah. Well, that's great advice. And I think anybody that's a syndicator out there and putting deals together, they would be wise to do the same, right? So
yeah, look at a little bit longer term. I would be very cautious about getting into short-term debt, because we're gonna get out of this recession, but it may take, Usually, I think they last like a year and a half, but it could be 6 months after that coming out of it. So I believe the interest rates are going to go up 7.5%. I don't know exactly, but then they're going to come down a little bit. It's all cyclical.
It always is, right?
Yep.
Well, thank you again so much for your time and the value you've added to my life, as always, as well as our listeners. We just wish you blessings to you and your family and all that your future holds.
Well, thank you very much for having me on. I had a blast.
Well, likewise. All right, you take care and come back and join us next time on our Lighthouse Podcast Ventures.
Thank you.